New Hampshire's 1st congressional district seat has been swinging back and forth like a political pendulum over the last 12 years. At the moment, 2018 looks like it could be favorable for Democrats, but it is a very busy primary field that continues to grow, featuring several qualified candidates. One of them is state rep and former New Hampshire AFL-CIO President Mark McKenzie, who is with us this morning. Representative,
morning. How are you?
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
You bet, sure.
So the issue of a government shutdown and this ongoing standoff between Democrats and Republicans, let's take a step back from a moment and just look at this from the idea of this kind of partisan brinksmanship that we see. Isn't the idea of, we get what we want or we shut down the government, aren't we in big trouble when we're at this point over and over again?
I mean, I think it's kind of systemic about what's going on in the government in general. Look, you go down to Washington to do a job, and your job is to balance those needs and to figure out ways to solve problems in that government. And you can't hold government hostage because of one particular issue. In D.C., you need to figure out a way to get to the place where we get people, stabilize the economy, stabilize this question of the shutdown. Because what's really happening is that thousands of workers are sitting on the edge of their seats right now trying to figure out whether or not they're going to be working next week. That's unfair and it's irresponsible. Do your job in Washington. Your job is to make sure this doesn't happen, and that's what they should be doing right now.
So is it safe to infer that if you were down there right now, you would not be pounding on the table saying we need protections for the Dreamers before we fund the government? You'd rather see these jobs protected and the government funded?
No, the Dreamers need to be protected, but you don't hold the process hostage over that particularly. What you do is you work out ways that you figure out ways that you can work together and come together, and let's not hold each other hostage. That's not the way government should be working. It should be a cooperative environment that you work in. And look, I'm a realist. I understand that, but you've politics aside, do your job down there.
Immigration is intertwined with that issue of trade. The president has said it's time to scrap NAFTA altogether. Is that something you would support him on?
Well, NAFTA was never good. I remember I was in the room with a bunch of activists and union people when NAFTA passed. NAFTA was a mistake. We didn't get the kinds of protections that we needed in NAFTA, and I think it's time to take a look at that. Unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult to do that because, the world has kind of accepted that, and all of the regulations are kind of entwined with that. But if we can pull back, I think it makes sense to do that.
Certainly, when you talk about NAFTA, there's the issue of Mexico, not necessarily one of the president's favorite countries. He faced a backlash recently over alleged comments that involved Haiti and other nations in which he allegedly used a vulgarity. That provoked a response from a lot of people saying that the president is a racist. And this is an increasingly position being adopted by a lot of Democrats. Do you believe that President Donald Trump is racist?
Look, what I believe is this. That when you begin the process of talking about immigrants in this country, you do one thing. You do it with dignity and respect, which is a frame that I've done all the work that I've ever done in working as a firefighter in Manchester and working as a representative of working men and women. The debate over whether or not immigrants should be coming to this country should really be focused on the fact that the American workforce needs new workers in this country. The immigration system we have is broken. It's driving immigrants into the shadows who are then being exploited. I think that we should stop the rhetoric that's going on and that we should produce a system of immigration that makes sense, that welcomes people to this country, that protects our borders. And that's what we should be talking about. Disregard the rhetoric that's going on and, again, get back to your job in the Congress of the United States.
So you're saying it doesn't matter whether or not, I guess, this debate over whether or not the president is racist. Doesn't matter, you say.
Look,
you'd rather move on to other stuff.
I'm not racist. I'm not going to spend my time talking about this guy. I'm going to spend the time talking about my campaign and what's important, what I think is important for our country.
You look at cities in New Hampshire like Rochester in CD1, Claremont over in CD2, working class cities, labor cities. They voted for Barack Obama in 2012. They voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Is this debate that we were just talking about over the president's alleged views productive to Democrats winning back cities like Rochester and Claremont?
My sense, and I've been a Democrat my whole life, my sense is the Democrats have lost their way in some respects. We were and should be the party of working people. When I was 5 years old, working on a campaign with my dad, I said, what are we doing? He said, we're helping the Democrat. I said, what's a Democrat? He said, the Democrats are the people of the working part. They're the people who support working men and women. My dad told me that then. I understand that. Unfortunately, money has invaded the Democratic Party. My campaign is about bringing this Democratic party back to its roots, back to the place where they defend and they fight with all they have for the working families of this country.
Of course, your experience has long been in the labor sector. Let's entertain a wild notion that somehow off the coast of New Hampshire there are massive oil and gas reserves, and we could see tens of thousands of jobs from offshore drilling. Would you vote to allow that to happen, though, off the coast of New Hampshire?
I wouldn't allow that to happen. I wouldn't vote to allow that to happen. Look, we are poisoning the air that we breathe, the water we drink, and the ground that raises our food. We got to come to grips with that. And interestingly enough, the only place where they're not going to put those kinds of drillings is off the coast of Florida, well, who somebody happens to live, quite frankly, which is pretty bizarre. But no, I wouldn't. I don't support that. We got to come up with new energy sources in this country. There is a whole industry that would create thousands of jobs for people with wind and solar and thermal and all kinds of technology we don't even know exists right now. That's the way we move forward. Get us off of fossil fuels, get us off our dependence on that, and come up with a system whereby we actually have a fossil-free country and a fossil-free world. It's ruining our world.
You were a big supporter of Bernie Sanders in 2016.
That's right.
And like Senator Sanders, you would like to reduce the eligibility age for Medicare and also work towards a free public education system for university and college education. How do you pay for that?
Well, you know, I worked with Jesse Jackson a number of years ago in 1988, and Jesse used to say, we're going to get the money from where the money went. And the money has been taken out of the education system, been taken out of our economy, and unfortunately it's being gobbled up by the richest 1% of the United States. We need to pull the money back. We need to put that money back into our economy and provide affordable education, if not free, for the people in this country. And we also got to look at the healthcare system, again, which is being gobbled up by corporations. And we got to come up with a system that expands Medicare, that expands healthcare to make it more affordable for people in this country. Same with Social Security. Social Security is a lifeline for many people in this country. It is a system that has stabilized many millions of people in this country. The idea you wake up every day worrying about whether or not your Social Security check is going to come in while you give billionaires additional tax relief, it makes no sense. It's out of balance. And one of the things about this campaign is to make a big noise about that and to make people coalesce around the idea that we can change that direction.
So higher taxes on the wealthy and potentially corporations as well? Is that the funding source?
Look, I lived through a time when they said give corporations more money and they're going to create new jobs in this country. I lived through that. The trickle-down concept. The trickle-down concept didn't make it to a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I've represented. There are still people in this economy that are working 2 or 3 jobs to make it their ends meet. And that's not America. That's not the way things should be. Pay people a decent job, a decent wage. Give them a pension. Give them Social Security. Stabilize them in their lives. And that's the way that we move forward in this economy. So.
Mentioned the 2016 primary there. That was one that could be classified as a little bitter between Democrats. What do you do when you encounter a really die-hard Hillary Clinton supporter in CD1 and they are upset about the way that primary went and they know that you're a big Bernie Sanders guy?
Well, I mean, any Democrat, quite frankly, should be upset about the way that primary went. I mean, I was at the National Convention. I was getting minute-by-minute updates from the Bernie Sanders campaign and then negotiations with Hillary Clinton. And we actually prevailed. I mean, the Bernie Sanders, and I think what we've done is to make the party better. And the reforms that are going to come out in the next few weeks are going to give you an idea of that. We had to have that confrontation. But the idea of that is not to make it weaker, it's to make it stronger. There's too much money coming into the Democratic Party from corporations, from other things. Get back to where we should be, get back to being the party of working families, and that's how you win elections, when people respect you and understand that's who you are.
Right now, 7 Democrats running in CD1 in that primary. How do you set yourself apart from that field?
I've been a fighter all of my life. I've done this work for over 40 years. My life has been about a life of service. As a firefighter in the city of Manchester for more than 20 years, I made that commitment as a life of service. I continued that in working in representing workers. I led the largest labor organization in the state of New Hampshire, the most diverse in terms of the economies, the different sectors of the economy that we represented. And all of that work was about making life better for working families in this state and in this country. And that's my work. whether it was under the guise of labor, it doesn't make any, it was about working families and making life better for people. I never went to the legislature and said, just give it to me. I went to the legislature and said, give it to us, the working families in New Hampshire.
All right. Representative Mark McKenzie, running in CD1 in the Democratic primary. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.